The question's been posed to me, does your irrigation system work? Well, there's water high. The slightest cut would let the water wherever I want it. Now it's not pumped. If it's pumped, then it's a whole other matter. Then it's dependent on fossil fuels. But look at this. Here's a zonia. To the right, all that stuff is growing. It's smart weed. It's not very palatable. People would think of them as weeds, but it's life and it's growing. On the upper side of the zonia, you can see that the water is soaked into the ground enough that it's growing there. Same thing with that little willow. Now this is dry on the surface. On the surface it's dry, but underneath the water table is being kept high by soaking. The reason that this looks looks as if it were droughty, nothing really living there, it has to do with the history of it. This, for one thing, this is a passageway. The pigs have been running through here. But I've also been, it's been not nearly as long that I've got this part functioning as I have the other. I mean, it takes years to mature. But it'll work its way. And the other thing too, I might have said this before, but I should say it again. The weed, quote unquote, acts like a forest, a canopy in a way. It shades the ground, and you can see in there among it. That's what the pigs will go along grazing. They'll graze that grass and that sedge that's in there. I've begun to widen the bodies of water by damming up the ends, by holding it back. I still have to keep the flow going, but this upper trench royal, for example, I've got it a little wider than in the spring when it's just a matter of getting the water to run through it. I've got a pretty good breach up here. I just spotted it. I'll walk you up there to see that. A breach there, which I'll come back and fix. But this is a pretty big one. So I'll take a shovel full and plop it in there, and then that delta that's grown up right there, I'll open that up again. Oh, there's another breach. I'm trying to follow that red-winged blackbird. This area looks pretty rough because I've had it too wet for most of the spring. I didn't need to. I just wasn't getting up here. But I do want to point out that this is biodiversity. If you want this to look like a lawn, well, you're going to have to go somewhere else. Or you're going to have to use a scythe all the time. I mean, I could do it. I could do it if I wanted to. But I actually think it's better to have that mix. There's tussock sedge, there's willow. I'm not too sure about those. I don't know if just this side of that double hickory, there's a. Well, I thought that was a hawthorn. It might be a rose. Not too sure about them. Some of these, there's an alder. And these autumn olive, I don't mind them. And of course, they're reaching down into the subsoil. The trees, and a lot of these quote-unquote weeds do as well. I could mow that all off, and then willows are not going to be a problem. The way they are, they're not thorny, or it's not hard to just control them in the winter. This area, if I could, I'd have these zonias all full of water, but I don't have much of a water supply right now. It's getting dry. But you can see the difference between what's been wet, too wet actually, for a lot of the spring over in there, and what has been drier. But the zonias are here, and it's all depending on a weir up in the woods to give me as much water as it can. But the water supply does go dry. I mean, this isn't a permanent water supply, but it can extend a dry season. I mean, it can hold water in the ground well into a dry spell, and sometimes right even past the dry spell. You see, I do have water up here, but I just don't have enough to make its way down there to the drier area. But that's why I'm here. There's a hatch that's barely able to supply anything. My supply is limited. And here's the trench royal. This is the main one. And here, once again, you can see where the ground is moist on both sides. What you don't see is underneath. You see the surface. All right, I'm gonna go up and see if I can bring any more water. Maybe before I do that, from this view, you can just see where I've had ample, if not too much water in the spring, and where it's now been going dry. Of course, this had to be developed from brush that looked like that. I really struggled with that, so it's like newly plowed ground. But moisture would sure help if I could get more to it. I muddied the water up just a little bit so you could see the flow, and that little bitty flow right there is what's irrigating that whole area here out through there. Still have tadpoles thriving in this area. I think the temperature of the water tends to be just about right for them right here. Before I go into the woods, it gets colder in there. There's the whole supply. I'm at the weir. You can see there's a hole there, which I'll plug in just a minute. That should be easy enough to plug. Look, I push my foot on here and it does plug. So anyway, I got a leak there. But anyway, that's my whole supply for the hillside. There you can see what I'm losing right here. I worked on that some yesterday. If I can spot any whirlpools, then it's easy. And over there, you can see the water that's going by. So I'm probably using a quarter, maybe less, of the water available at the moment. But I got to build the system. That's got a bunch more going. What I did was, since I have the shovel with me today, not the hoe, I experimented, and sure enough there was a little bit of soil right there, which I could dig out and place where the leaks are. A lot of this area just doesn't have soil. It's all rocks covered with moss and stuff. Now over here, there's soil that I can use, and I have a bucket so I can bring it across. It takes time. And it's so much fun, but it does take time, and I've got hay to get in, and I've got some pigs I've got to ship today or tomorrow, and I'm just busy. And anyway, I'd a lot rather do this with company because it is so much fun. But that'll make a big difference out in that field. Now I'm up in the woods. This is Grandpa Jim Weir, and there's a stronger flow here. And you might wonder, well, if I take it away here, what about, doesn't that take it away below? Not really, not here. The water soaks into the ground, comes back out of the ground. Now, I muddied it up, walking along, pressing with my feet. And I still don't really see. Well, there's a suspicious spot right there. I can patch that. There's a whirlpool. Let me try zooming on that. I bet you can see that. I probably developed that when I walked through. Another thing I wanted to say though is here there's soil that I can use a mattock or a pick and pull it down and cover a lot of stuff. Okay, good. I found a leak. Many years ago, 30, 40 years ago, I'd realized that a hole as big as my thumb would shut this whole system off. So I'll fix that, and then I'm going to head on up. Boy, look at that. I must have developed that myself by walking through there. It's grown with time. Makes me think of Edgar Allan Poe's Descent into the Maelstrom. Look at it. Well, I got material here to plug it with, so that won't last long. I'm not sure if I showed you this spot. I probably mentioned it in passing, but as it's getting dry, there's still water running here. In any case, this is an area which my Bisse, my new Bisse, is going to be crossing. Interesting. Well, I wanted to show you that tree down there too, the way that grew. And sorry, my hands shake. I only got one hand on it. And then I also wanted to point out that beach. I really like beaches. They like water. Here we are, the new Bisse. I was here yesterday without the camera and without a shovel too, I think. But I gained, I think I'm going to call these Bisse feet. I gained about 6 Bisse feet. You can see a lot of water just running past. That's okay. I've got enough that I can get a measure on where I can go. So I'm going to play here for a while. I brought an iron bar up. I got to switch that for another one. That one's crooked. It's hard to work with. I'm going to leave the shovel here. So I'm going to play a while. There, what I did was I double lined it. Not because it was leaking through it. It wouldn't leak through that. But because on the uphill side it wasn't wide enough and it was spilling out on the uphill side. Then I took that rock out. Boy, that thing didn't want to come out. But I got him out, and that got the flow going. Now I've got water I can work with. But I think my time's up for today. So I'll have to remember to bring some pruning shears and a hoe. Maybe a permanent hoe here. This comes from a different spring, a much weaker spring, and I'm on my sister's and brother-in-law's ground. I think I'm going to ask them permission to start a Bisse right here, an even newer Bisse right here to go out that way. There's what looks like a classic example of a bent tree. Maybe it happened naturally. I have my doubts. But anyway, it's very, very healthy. I always called it the bench oak because you could sit on there like a bench. You could lay underneath that main trunk too. Bent trees is what they're called. They think the Native Americans did them as a sign for something. Back to that matter of, is my irrigation system working? On the left is unirrigated. On the right is irrigated. Now, a lot of that what you see has to do with the fact is palatability on the part of the pigs. And also the pigs have done their first rooting, which is really like plowing and harrowing, disking and harrowing. It's ready to grow something. But even before that, you could see the difference. When it would get dry, this would end up looking like the moon, even if it had no pigs had been around at all. Whereas this would stay green.